Hi, I'm Zibby Owens, and I am the host of this podcast, Moms Don't Have Time to Read Books. I am also a newly minted USA Today bestselling author of the novel Blank. I've created a whole community of book lovers around this podcast, a publishing company, reading retreats, a bookstore, and more. Learn more at zibbymedia.com or follow me on social at Zibby Owens or join the community at Zibby Readers. Ann Leary is the author of I've Tried Being Nice, essays. This is actually one of the Zibby's book club picks, so I hope you will join us for our book club discussion. You can find all the details on zibbymedia.com. Ann Leary is the New York Times bestselling author of a memoir and 4 novels, including The Good House. Her work has been translated into 18 languages, and she has written for The New York Times, Plowshares, NPR, Redbook, and Real Simple, among other publications. Her essay, Rallying to Keep the Game Alive, was adapted for Prime Video's television series Modern Love. Her novel, The Good House, was adapted as a motion picture starring Sigourney Weaver and Kevin Kline. She lives with her husband in New York. Visit her online at annleary.com. Today, we have Ann Leary. I'm so excited. This is a book club pick of mine. I'm obsessed with this book. I've Tried Being Nice, essays. Congratulations.
Thank you, Zibby.
So awesome.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. I'm so excited that you picked my book for your book club. It's awesome. And it's very exciting now to be on your podcast. This is my first actual interview for this book. So what better person to do it with?
Oh, perfect. Thank you. So first of all, I saw the cover and the title and all of it, and I just got it right away. And I was like, I'm going to love this. This speaks to me, as it will for so many other people. Tell listeners what this is about.
Okay.
Yeah.
So this is an essay collection, and I usually write fiction. But these are some essays that have been a few have been previously published, and a few were actually prompted. I had a blog years ago that doesn't exist anymore, but I still had, so I had some of the things I blogged about, I used as prompts for these essays. But the title comes from the title essay, which is called I've Tried Being Nice, and it's about a little dispute I had with one of my neighbors and her dogs coming on our property. And, and I'm a lifelong people pleaser, as I think a lot of women are. And I finally reached a certain age where I realized everyone doesn't have to love me more than anyone else. I can live with people being like slightly fond of me or even like wholly hating my guts. I don't know. That I don't know if I can live with. But I did have a dispute with my neighbor one day, and it ended up, I drove up to her in my pajamas in my car while she was walking her dogs, rolled down the window. And after many encounters with her where I was like, oh, hi, it'd be so nice if your dogs weren't on my property, my dogs. Finally, I rolled down my window and said, look, I've tried being nice. And the response from this woman, it was as if I had pointed a gun. She was kind of staggered backwards and she started, panicking a little. And I realized what a powerful thing it is to suddenly stand your ground. But the rest of the essays, there are that theme of, kind of trying to get along with the people, trying to have everyone, pleased and also reaching a certain age. They're kind of throughout the essays, but the essays touch on everything from taking ballroom dancing lessons with my husband to empty nesting. And, I write a little bit about my childhood, about my growing up. And so, I had fun writing the essays. And so I'm so glad that you like them and that I'm hoping others will too when they read.
You start off with this scene with the dogs and being nice. And then at the end of the collection, you get to a point where you and a friend are sort of talking about this tennis companion, your doubles, and you're so funny. And I played tennis, and this was like the funniest scene ever. And then you're walking with your friend, and you're like, I think I've realized the problem. I'm just too nice.
Yeah, and I totally believed that. I had been, at first I had been savaging this other tennis player to my friend as we were walking. She's a cheater. She's a poor sport. And then I said, Kate, I think my problem is I'm just too nice. And she for some reason, just was doubled over in laughter. I couldn't breathe. And I was like, what? I thought something, crazy had happened that I hadn't seen. And it turned out she was laughing at me because she was shocked that I thought I was too nice. Apparently one of I have problems. One is not that I'm too nice, according to my friend. But yeah, that was funny. I wrote a tennis essay for the Modern Love column, and that's in this book in a longer version. And I do write a little bit about tennis, and I do think you can find out anything you want to know about a person on the tennis court, probably on the basketball court. Any kind of area where you're in competition, you kind of see who a person really is.
Totally.
Right?
I fell in love with my husband on the tennis court.
Oh, how sweet! Yeah. Oh, I love that.
He was actually my tennis pro.
Oh,
we can go into that. Yes.
Wow.
But I can, off camera.
I bet you're really a good tennis. I'll never play you. I play all the time. I'm the worst tennis player you've ever seen.
I can't. No, if you're playing that much, you can't be that bad.
I just can't get better at tennis.
I disagree. I'm sure you've gotten better. You have another essay in here that I literally laughed for. I was like crying laughing about your empty nesting.
Right.
So in most literature and contemporary fiction and memoir, empty nesting is presented as this like horror. Like I've been, I have this ticking clock, right? Like, oh my gosh, the sadness and all of this stuff. And you have turned that on its head and made it so fun and so full of personality. Talk a little bit about how empty nesting has been for you.
So, I've been an empty nester now for a few years, but probably, you might be going through this already, but like leading up to, especially I have two children, a son and a daughter. And when my son was, close to graduating from high school and going off to college, I really had a hard time. I was very, very sad and worried. And, I then in this essay, I write about dropping him off. And then, 2 years later, dropping my daughter off at college. And, it was I actually was, crying when we left her. And then my husband pulled over, I thought, because I was crying. And then finally I was like, no, I'm fine. I heard this noise from him. It's like, and I looked over, and the man's head was his face was buried in his hands. He was sobbing. It was so hard. So anyway, we got home. I was making dinner. I had the TV on while I cooked, and he came in and did his automatic shut the TV off. It's dinner time. And I said the words my husband had been waiting 20 years to hear, which was, let's watch TV while we eat. Because when the kids were growing up, we didn't watch TV even on school nights because they had so much homework, but we had family dinners. And so the essay is about all the other things we found out we had changed about ourselves to be good parents. And, I'm sure many people are born, are naturally very conscientious and polite and have excellent manners and don't swear and don't gossip. But we're not really like that. But we had to act like that for 20 years because we knew our kids deserved better than us the minute they were born. And so, we didn't swear in front of them. And we, had nice meals and family meals. And then within days of them being gone, it was like a hedonist temple. We were like eating in front of the TV with our hands. Like we didn't say, could you please pass the butter? We'd just like lunge for it. And, our kids couldn't bear, I'm sure your kids are the same. Like if my kids saw me in my underwear, they would, make throw up noises. And, I like the first couple of weeks, if I'd go to the laundry room to get my clothes, I'd be like, covering myself. But, I realized the one person in the house that liked to see me in my underwear was like running up the stairs. So please. And so it's just about like, finding out there was this bright side to that transition in my life. I didn't see it as it was coming up. I didn't see it as a transition. I saw it as the end of this, wonderful family, the stage, and it wasn't the end. And during COVID, and I didn't write about COVID really in these essays, but we had 3 adults in our house for a year and a half. They came back. And so we were like, where's that empty nest that we loved so much?
No, you were so funny. You're like, when they come back again, we stop being like naked and swearing and, all this stuff. But they kind of know that while they're not there, you're having like this alternate lifestyle.
Yeah, we're being ourselves, which is not very, not the most commendable way to be.
But do you think maybe your kids have some of all that in you and would think it was hilarious? I mean, they are your kids.
Yeah. I mean, certainly as they got older, as we all do, you do start not worrying about your language, and then they stop worrying about theirs. Everyone starts kind of becoming adults together, right? So, but I think, I do, I think I mentioned in the essay, I was if I was on the phone with my sister gossiping and my daughter walked in the room, I'd stop, not just because I didn't want her to hear what I was saying, but I didn't want her to hear me saying it because gossiping isn't nice. And, I didn't want to set that example. And then, when she was gone, it was, full bore ahead.
You write a lot about homeowning, which many
Right.
people can relate to, and the raccoons who took up residence. No, bats that took up residence. Bats or raccoons? Both. You had bats on you, right, in one of the houses.
Oh, my gosh. Yeah. So we had this. So we lived on this, our kids were raised on this little, kind of a farm because it was, it had some acreage up in northwestern Connecticut. But we're not really, we didn't know about the bat situation. We had if you live in the country and you have a chimney, close it in the summer and also get a cap on it. But anyway, we had a series of bat invasions. It was embarrassing how many times bats came in our house. And it turns out, my husband is really pretty brave in most situations, but if you've ever seen The African Queen, and, the main character is afraid of leeches. He's in the water. Like, my husband is terrified of bats. I didn't know that until we had one fly in our house, and he tried to trample our children running away from it. And so, yeah, I did write about one time I was sitting at a table where we think the bat must have spent the night like hanging upside down on the table. But I was wearing like these paper thin pajama bottoms. And when I stood up, my daughter, who was probably 8 or 9, said, Mom, there's a bat on your pajamas. And it's so weird because afterwards we played this over. And for some reason, I didn't look down. I was so terrified. And I looked in her eyes and I said, is it real? And she said, yes. And then we screamed it. I looked down and like bats, they have this like half human, half pig face, and they kind of smile in this like maniacal way, and they're horrifying. And so I, ran through the house, and
my gosh,
yes. So I wrote about that, and then, it also kind of there was sort of a Grey Gardens component to that.
Yes, and then when you left that house and you were moving out, that was also sort of this bittersweet moment.
Yeah, it's so funny. So I usually have, since I write fiction, usually actresses narrate my books, but I was the narrator of this because, as you know, if you write a memoir or, you write, it's better to have the author read it. But embarrassingly, I kept getting choked up, actually, with that chapter and another one. And the poor guy who was producing it, he was like not moved at all. He was kind of like, can you stop doing that? I was like, why am I getting choked up at my own thing? But yeah, it was leaving this. We needed to downsize and we wanted a smaller house, but we sold it and it was kind of bittersweet. But the great thing was then we love where we live now so much more. And I wrote about that too. We bought a house from a woman who's a big gardener, and she had a little lean-to greenhouse attached to the house. And I've never known anything about plants. And now I truly have an indoor jungle. My kids and my husband think there's a problem. I'm a plant hoarder. But, the house kind of made me want plants and made me find another thing I love, which I have many things I love, many hobbies, but that's a new one.
The end of that chapter actually made me cry. When you end it with Edelweiss, let me see if I can.
Well, the father of the woman we bought the house from is Richard Rogers of Rogers and Hart, Rogers and Hammerstein. So,
heard of him.
Is it Hammerstein?
Hammerstein? I thought it was Steen, but I could be wrong.
So the father of the woman who she was dead, but the father, a member of the family of the person we bought the house from, wrote Edelweiss and wrote many, many famous songs for musicals. So.
Okay, so this is the end of that chapter. You said, I had Googled Mrs. Emery when we first moved here and was pleased to learn that her father had written the song My Funny Valentine, which our friend Julie sang for my husband and me at our wedding. But now I wanted to know about Linda Rogers Emery, not her father. I read a few interesting profiles written about her and her obituary. I discovered that Mrs. Emery was loving and giving. She was philanthropic and creative, but she also struggled, as I have, with shyness and bouts of severe depression. Some quick math revealed that she moved here when she was about my age. The trees, the flowers, the gardens, and the greenhouse that lift my spirits each day had creating them lifted hers. I'm not into musicals and show tunes, but I heard the Rogers and Hammerstein song Edelweiss around Christmas time last year. I was in my happy place, the local plant store, just browsing. The tune stuck with me. It's one of those songs that takes root. Later, I was singing it as I tried to rearrange some plants on my greenhouse deck to make room for my laptop. Like I said, I'm not really into spirituality or show tunes, but I got a little teary as I hum-sang to all my green darlings, my tender foundlings, and to the spirit of Mrs. Emery too. Blossoms of snow, may you bloom and grow forever. Oh, my mom used to sing me that song going to bed. Yeah,
it's a really beautiful song. So yeah, they were playing when we were looking at real estate. I'm a real estate junkie. One of my books is about a real estate broker,
yes.
And I love real estate. I show up at open houses. We're not in the market.
That's literally part of my novel. I have to say, yeah, she has like a whole secret Instagram thing because she goes to open houses all the time.
Yeah.
At Open House Bandit. I'm like obsessed with going to open houses.
Yeah.
So
No, I don't want to move. I just want to see everyone's house.
Me too.
Like when I came in, I was so excited to see your house. But but when we were looking at this house, the brokers had like a little speaker and they were playing, songs from The Sound of Music, and so then they could lead that into the father of the woman who owned this place was this famous composer, and it didn't enter into our decision to buy the house at all. But it does, once you know something about that, it does kind of influence you. And I did write one thing that was exciting about this house is we moved in the winter. And in the spring, she was such an avid gardener. These beautifully planted perennial beds started to bloom, and she had orchestrated them, and almost like a choreographer. It was like in the early spring we had the daffodils and the little early, what are they called? Daffodils.
Geraniums?
No, they're like snowdrops.
Okay,
daffodils.
This is beyond my pay grade here.
And then when those would start to die off, these irises would bloom, and it was almost, it was like, enter stage right. The lilies come, and then these go, and there was there were these beautiful big pots on the patio full of dirt, and I thought, they should have. Really, why did they leave us pots of dirt? I don't like. Now we have to move them, but I'm glad we didn't because she had planted even those with beautiful perennials that it was like a beautiful surprise. She had died before the estate sold the house, so I just felt a connectedness to her through that, and that kind of inspired me to explore, gardening and planting. So,
oh my gosh! Yeah. So your novels, I can get the word out. Your novels, The Good House, which you referenced already, and which became a movie, which I saw, which was amazing.
Oh, thank you,
Sigourney Weaver, all of that, and also The Foundling, which we talked about on this podcast before.
Thank you. Yes,
your process for writing novels versus essays. Tell me about the difference and all of that.
It's interesting. I'm usually working on a novel, so I'm often, and you probably have experienced this too, where if you're writing fiction, you are in another world, especially writing historical fiction. And The Foundling is my one historical novel, and it takes place in 1927. And I spent a lot of years working on that. So I was always in this, I like to be in a away place, in a fantasy place. And I do write in this book. I moved a lot as a child. I think that's why I had moved, changing schools a lot. I often didn't have friends right away. And I just was very much into kind of escaping into fantasy. And so right now I'm working on trying to get a new novel started. And that's a hard thing for me. I don't know, like, for you what your process is, but I usually at this point am kind of auditioning narrators. So I know the story of, I don't know completely the story, but I have an idea of the story, but I'm not sure who should tell it. And so, for example, The Good House, originally there was the main character was supposed to be this woman, Rebecca, and I would write it. And the only time it wasn't working, the only time the book came alive when I was writing about this, who was once a peripheral character, this Hildy, this real estate broker, who was this kind of real New Englander and real towny. And I knew this character very well. And I actually really, every time I was writing about her, the book came alive. And then finally I realized she had kind of hijacked that book. I was like, okay, you tell the story then.
Wait, but whose point of view was it from originally?
It was actually kind of a close third person. So it was about this other, Rebecca, who was the one who was married to the rich man. And so anyway, so then the story became about Hildy. So I'm hoping right now I have many failed auditions of characters, but that's how I see it. It's sort of, I know whose story it is if I can find that I understand a character well enough that they can, do anything and I would know how this character would react, kind of thing. You know, I felt like I told my editor at the time when I was working on The Good House, if my editor said, you know, we need a scene with Hildy on the moon, I would know exactly what Hildy would do in space. So I think that's a really important thing. With my writing, I like to really fully develop characters, and then the plot kind of comes from that. What about you? Do you write, like, do you plot out? Do you, like,
yeah, because I've had sold the last 2 novels on proposal to my editor, so I have to do like a 60-page thing with like
it's hard
dialogue.
to sell novels on proposal.
Yeah, I don't know. I need the, but then I go off the outline.
Right.
But I start with the person.
Right.
And the story sort of, actually, that's not true. Is that true? No, it's not true.
You
but
start
the
with
idea and the person are like interlinked.
Right.
Like, I guess you could tell the story from some other perspective, but not really.
Do you outline and then do you know how it's going to end usually? Okay. Yeah, that's key, I think. I often don't.
You don't know how
That's what I struggle with. And it's good to know where it's going. I know at some point, but I often, when I'm starting, I don't know. And sometimes I have an idea for an ending that ends up not being the end.
Well, I changed it too.
Yeah.
Sometimes it changes.
Yeah.
Sometimes. I mean, I've only, I haven't done, the books that didn't work didn't have an outline. So I've decided that having an outline is probably helpful for me.
I think it's very important.
I think also, I haven't written 8 million novels like other people who are like know how to do it like the back of their hand. So I feel like I need these color by numbers sort of steps.
Yeah. So. You have to feel your way. And each one, I think you get a little better, and things that were hard get easier, I think. So.
And where do you like publishing essays the most?
What do you mean? In which magazine?
So when you're writing essays now, like what is the best place for you?
Oh, where do I work?
Like where should people find your essays?
Oh, okay.
Where,
well, so some of these essays were previously published.
Right.
I have a couple were in Real Simple. Real Simple I don't know, do they still have great essays? They used to have I loved Real Simple essays because it's a beautiful magazine, but the personal essay was the only one. Mm-hmm. I don't know. I always liked that. So a couple of them were in Real Simple. There was the Modern Love piece. There were a couple that were in anthology. Somebody just asked me if I'd write for an anthology. And so, I got permission to reprint those, but most of them are original. And they really were I wanted to keep them within this kind of theme, not really, too closely connected as a theme, but just of, reaching a certain age, finding out who I really am, and, feeling I can, claim this space as my own. And I hope you like me. If you don't, I will die. No.
Are there any like germs of ideas for stories that could be part of the collection, but you didn't write, or that you decided not to include?
Yeah, I actually have, one chapter about my dogs. I mentioned my dogs, but I've always thought I should just do a memoir of all our animals, because my husband and I and my kids, we're all just animal nuts. We've had a lot of pets. Right now we have 4 dogs. That's about 3 too many right now. We have 2 very unhinged rescues, but they're kind of our life. And so, but I do I'm obsessed with animal behavior. And so I thought I'd like to do a whole collection of just that. But there were essays I wrote that just weren't right for this collection that I might put in another one. So yeah, but I tend to, as far as where I'm writing this, so I usually write on my bed, propped up like an otter, with my computer on my chest, and I just find it comfortable to write like that. I like to write really early in the morning, so I get up between 5 and 6, and I'm really the brightest then, and the most confident, and then as the day goes on, my confidence wanes until I actually, if I look at something I wrote, my face turns scarlet and I want to die. And then the next morning it looks fine again. So I write at home. But this book, I wrote in my local library, much of it. We have a great library in my town, and I wrote there, and one to have quiet, but also they do have internet there, but it's very embarrassing to be shopping on Amazon in the library. Like, the people who work there, I've done events there, so they know I'm an author. So I just don't. I just work because I don't want to be seen like buying, sneakers, or
bathing suits for my daughter, and
in stupid places that I like to go on the internet. So I think that's why I liked writing this in the library. And I love
lovely.
libraries. So.
Plus, now you can say you wrote it in the library, and that sounds good.
Yes,
Yeah. So you sound
it does.
very scholarly and literary.
It actually makes the book sound smarter.
Yes.
Yeah. Instead of writing it, in my bed like an otter. Not quite as literary as one might think.
So for the book club members and people out there who are reading the book, what should they know sort of going into it? Let's just say they haven't started it yet. Is there anything you want what do you want them to take away at the end?
I hope people will find it relatable. I think that it is, I hope they'll take away, many things, but one thing I think the people pleasing is something I kind of go back to. Some of it comes from, just growing up a certain way or during a certain era. And also there's a lot of alcoholism in my family, and I'm in recovery, and I've written a lot about that. I actually write an essay about that in the book. But a lot of people pleasing is about, alcoholism. And when you're actively drinking, you just, you're kind of in this spiral or in this cycle of like shame, then wanting people to like. And anyway, so just kind of vestiges of that remain when you stop drinking. And so that was part of it. And, but I think anyone I talk to about it, people relate to that, especially women. I do think, and I actually have read that women, we are kind of wired from primitive times to want to engage with other women. And, that's why women like look in each other in the eye, because when we were kind of tribal, primitive people, we would need the other women to like us because our children would be safer. And men needed to go and hunt, and they didn't need that. So I think some of it just is natural. And then, but once in our modern world, it's like one of those many things in human behavior that we, it's like why we don't have a tail anymore. Like, we need all the women to love us so much, but we do, I think. It even goes back to tennis. When I play tennis mixed doubles, I've noticed men, I'm always like looking at the people's faces, right? Across the court.
Yep.
And I should be looking at the ball, Men look at the ball because they're kind of hunting and motivated. So
and
anyway.
You mentioned about women saying sorry. Like, I'm always like, sorry,
right,
sorry.
Right.
And men are just like, whatever.
Yeah. So there's this kind of thing. I don't know. And then, I didn't touch on Karens at all because but there's this fine line. You don't want to be a total like kick me Charlie.
Right.
Here, but. Like there's so much, and maybe because of the internet, it seems like there's so much more, but there's so many very entitled people who should be more people pleasing, more considerate. There's a fine line. So I certainly wouldn't want to be a person who is inconsiderate, but I want to, it's kind of a waste of time when one does apologize too much. It kind of, it can get in your way a little bit, and people find it like, can you just, it's like the dog that is always kind of trying to get you to pet and stuff.
Yes. And I should have mentioned the whole section on, when you went to the resort and you had the drink with a little bit of rum in it, and you're like, maybe I can do this now after all that time. Maybe it was just a cult and, blah, blah, blah. And then you're like, oh, no, wait, this is why I can't do this. Have you read Drunkish by Stephanie Wilder Taylor?
No. Drunkish?
Drunkish.
I can't believe it. I usually read most drinking memoirs, but no, I didn't.
It came out this past year. I'll see if I have a copy here to give you. But it's sort of similar because she's like, oh, no, I can do it.
Right.
Like, I can get away with this.
Right.
And it wasn't until she's like, well...
Yeah, now I remember. Yeah, it's funny. So my editor, when this book was, in the process of being editing, she said, there's a whole thing now of, it cracks me up to even say it, of people being sober curious.
I know, it's so funny.
And I was like, wait, what? I'm like social drink curious. I want to be a social drinker. And that's all I've ever tried to be. And most alcoholics, we want that. And it's, most people... get drunk every now and then, like they have their evening drink, and we want to be like you. But I was born, the first time I drank, I had a full blackout. It just, so yeah, but that essay was, I did try to become a social drinker after 14 years of not drinking. And then it was a failed experiment. And I don't drink anymore. And now it's been another 14 years of me not drinking, or longer of me not drinking again, which I'm a very happy person when I don't drink, day and night. I'm just,
Yeah. Excellent.
So,
Okay. Well, Anne, thank you so much. I've
Thank
tried being
you.
nice. One of my favorites. Laughed so hard.
I'm so glad.
So, I mean, everyone is going to love this book, and people will be passing it around. I can just feel it, like a deck of cards.
I hope so. I hope so.
Congratulations.
Thank you, Zibby.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Oh my God.
Thanks for listening to Moms Don't Have Time to Read Books. If you love it, please leave a review and follow us on social at Zibby Owens and at Zibby Readers.